What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is a visionary who came out of retirement to craft a hotel that acts as a living museum with strong historical significance. He is dedicated to creating independent hospitality spaces and is currently in the soft opening stage of his second hotel in Panama. He spent 3 years sailing on a boat he made himself, taking his family to 42 countries, where he eventually decided to settle down in Panama. He's the founder and CEO of La Compania Hotels and Resorts. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Lenz. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good to see you again.
It's so good to see you. I think last time we saw each other was in Bruce's Swamp in southern Indiana 6 years ago.
Maybe pre-first hotel. I don't even know if I'd started construction yet at that point.
No, I think you were thinking about it. I think you had like a plan, and then you're like, you were in Panama, you docked your boat there, and your son was starting to go to school there. I think you were just getting your whole life settled, and you're like, all right, we're going.
Yeah, it was one of those 180-degree turns of life's plans that you never quite know how it's going to end up.
And where do we ever know where life is going to end up anyway, right? I want our listeners and watchers to know that I think I first met you in 1998 or 9 in Hong Kong via Mikey and Diana Dobin from Valley Forge fame. But you are an entrepreneur at heart and a hospitality aficionado at heart, and that you had, I only remember one restaurant / bar called Igor's in Hong Kong, but you had 37 restaurants throughout Hong Kong and into China as well, or just Hong Kong?
I had in Singapore for a while.
Singapore.
Primarily, in the end, there was 37 in Hong Kong.
Wow. That's so unbelievable. And other businesses to support those 37 restaurants.
Yeah, we had a large food factory. We'd make 200,000 pieces of food a day, supplying a coffee shop chain. I'm not going to say the brand necessarily, but we supplied 123 stores on a daily basis. All their juices, salads, sandwiches, croissants, etc. So 200,000 pieces of food import business, 37 restaurants, 22 different brands.
You are an international man of mystery on a sailboat. So like maritime law ruled you for however long you were visiting those 42 countries, but you're originally from the land of the maple leaf, Canada.
Correct. I left Thunder Bay, Canada, north of Duluth, Minnesota, a little over 41 years ago. At 18, I left.
And that was to go to Switzerland?
That's right. Yeah, I went to work for a summer in Switzerland as a waiter and
Wow.
never came home.
Unbelievable. One other really fun fact I would like to let everyone know. So this bar, Igor's in Hong Kong, I thought I was there on a Halloween, but basically Igor, every night was Halloween. So I wasn't there on Halloween, but they had this great cover band where I just remember all these dudes playing rock and roll in like these Karate Kid skeleton suits.
That's right.
Like the bad guys in the like Cobra Kai guys in the skeleton suits. And they were awesome. Like they were absolutely incredible. They sounded exactly like every band they played. I remember having a really fun night there, waking up with a very bad hangover the next day. But fast forward many, many years, that singer that I saw eventually became the lead singer of Journey.
That's correct. Arnel Pineda.
Wow. And are you still in touch with him?
Absolutely. Yeah. He worked 9 years for me. Igor's, that first restaurant I opened, that was a horror-themed dinner theater. I actually put that band together, and the band was called the Rolling Bones. We'd hand out plastic glow-in-the-dark bone maracas. And he led that. And then ultimately he worked in another nightclub venue we had in Lan Kwai Fong, the bar district of Hong Kong. So he spent 9 years with us. He sang at my wedding.
Oh, wow.
And recently, my wife's 60th birthday, we celebrated with Arnel playing live in Toronto, which was super happy for the man. He deserved it. He's incredible talent. And he deserves all the success and fame he's earned for himself.
Well, much on this, on a path that you could never, well, maybe you could imagine him. I don't know if you could ever imagine someone becoming the lead singer of Journey, but saw all those musicians destined to do other great things in their careers. But I can only imagine having founded and had 37 businesses, or 39 businesses if you count the other supplying businesses, under your belt. You must have impacted so many people in so many profound ways that you must still get surprise notifications or updates from former employees or rising stars that are on to do these other incredible, I don't know, just being on an incredible path in their lives.
No, absolutely. I think, at one point we surpassed 1,000 employees in the company. I sold out to a public company in the end and retired. And with that, the key personnel all got a very tidy check. Because at the end of the day, they were the ones who made the company. I don't think we kept building restaurants because of making more money. It was young. It was, I think we were rambunctious. A deal would come up, and in Hong Kong, it was all about the rent, and we get a decent deal. And I was like, what can we put here? And it's where my addiction, I tell people I'm addicted to fairy dust. That's where I caught my addiction, and I can't shake it.
I'm surprised by, it makes total sense, but I've never heard that before. Land cost in Hong Kong is so insane. When you're looking around, our spaces are there. I can't imagine that you would find very many good deals, but like, walk us through a moment when you found a spot and you're like, oh, this is a great deal. We have to do something. I've never heard it like where the rent is the green light or red light for whether a deal happens, right? I feel like normally there's many other factors, but I didn't know it would just be that one.
No, I think in Hong Kong, look, there's certain mistakes you can't make. Wrong rental deal, unrecoverable. Wrong location, unrecoverable. Wrong concept is recoverable. I can change concepts in Hong Kong in 2 weeks. We could change from the pink flamingo to the green flamingo. It's possible. In 2 weeks, we could do that sort of thing. But certain mistakes you could not make. And if you did, there was no recovery. And the typical one is the location and rent in Hong Kong. Those are the most critical things. Obviously, the venue had to have the right ceiling heights and the right shapes, that it was plausible. But I can tell you, I even opened restaurants where we could only build an electric kitchen at a certain size, and that became a steak frit restaurant, and the menu only had steak frit and salad. That was it. So the job in Hong Kong, or the job, I think, in expensive, world-class gateway cities, is location, size, space, terms, and then the restaurateur's job, and this is what most get wrong, it's our job to put a square peg into a square hole. Many restaurateurs decide, or chefs decide, I'm going to open an Italian restaurant. And they find maybe a good location. There's 5 other Italian restaurants down the street. It doesn't make sense. It's finding the location first with the right terms, and then looking at the market and going, what does this market want? And that's what I'm going to create. So customer driven rather than ego driven, personal identity driven.
Wow. So that makes complete sense, but I can totally see how most people who are doing a restaurant, they are a chef. Like, they have something, they have a vision that they want to go. And now that's the round peg. And then they're looking at all the different spaces, and that's the square hole. And wow, I didn't think about that. Cause I'm not a restaurateur, never have been one, don't claim to be one. But one of my favorite hospitality books is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. And he always looked at the lease. Obviously, he would always go in these kind of ancillary neighborhoods, or like up and coming. And he originally, when he was looking at these leases, so it wasn't location and it was lease, he looked at it as a long-term liability. They'd be like 10 or 20 year leases. But in the book, his uncle was like, no, yes, it is a liability, but you actually have to look at that as your asset, because that's really your fixed runway that you can build everything off of. So I don't know if he went into that Union Square Cafe thinking about, oh, this is going to be Union Square Cafe or Gramercy Tavern. He went into that finding a place like, I want to do something here. And I have to go back and look, but I'm sure that the bones of that restaurant spoke to him about what it would be. But I do think he went into those with an idea for what the menu would be, because he was also like a chef guy. He loved food.
Yeah, no, and look, that's what most do. And many succeed. And I think what happens with a lot of chefs is they open one restaurant, they succeed. So they decide to open a second restaurant. And maybe they still succeed. And then when they go for the third one, they falter. And it could be a chef, it could be a restaurateur. And why? Why does that happen? Because you're a good chef doesn't mean you're a good businessman. But when you think you have two restaurants are going to be 50-50 in each one. No, it's not. It's 40 and 40. And at three restaurants, it's not 33% in each restaurant. It becomes 25, 25, and 25. And the final 25%, you're starting to run a company. Are you good at running a company? Because those are two different bowls to juggle. So, you know, my background was 3-star Michelin in Europe. That's where I trained. I chefed it. I waitered it. Have I ever opened that, or do I ever have any intentions of opening a restaurant at that level? The answer is no. Because what I learned there, I learned what I don't want to do.
Oh, that's interesting. So what is it about that you don't want to do?
I would rather own a McDonald's and eat in a 3-star Michelin restaurant than own a 3-star Michelin restaurant, work like an animal, not eat dinner, and not realize I'm hungry until I'm driving home after my 16 hours and I go through a drive-through at McDonald's because I need fuel. And as revolting as that might sound, or as, you know, juxtaposition, contrarian, that's exactly what happens. To be driven to that level is an all-consuming sport that costs your family, it costs marriages, drug addictions, alcohol addictions. Pushing to that level, I take my hat off to those gentlemen and ladies that do that. I respect them. I understand what it means. But like I said, I'd rather own a McDonald's and enjoy the 3-star Michelin as a customer.
Okay, so to be at that level of a 3-star Michelin restaurateur or chef, in many ways, you have to be an uncompromising visionary, right? That's your vision. You're going after at the cost of everything else, right? That is your number one priority, to be done at the expense of everything else. And for all those things that you listed.
Yeah, it's no different than Rafael Nadal in tennis. To perform at the peak of any sport or any industry, to perform at the peak and the cutting edge of it, that's time in the saddle and absolute total commitment. And if you're lucky, you're gifted on top of it with creativity and you have a business acumen. Many things in those recipes have to come together in order to hit that nail on the head. And it's not easy.
So let me push a little bit here on that idea of the uncompromising visionary. From whether it's Nadal or a 3-star Michelin restaurateur, you told a little bit of a lie a few minutes ago. You said you retired. You didn't retire. You got on a boat. You went to a country. I don't know if you've been to Panama before, but you're like, you know what? I'm going to start a hotel. You know what? I'm going to start a second hotel. You know what? I think I want to do a third hotel. So at what point is that all consuming, or how have you created boundaries with your wife, who you mentioned, and your son, and your boat, which is also part of your family still, right?
No, I sold a boat. I sold a boat.
But so I would say that you are uncompromising in your vision that you're executing right now. You're in your hotel that is in the soft opening stage right now, up in the mountains above Panama City. You want to do a third one, but how have you created guardrails so that you are able to maintain balance, or are you not able to? Like, what's the difference between what you're doing now and that 3-star Michelin restaurateur?
Guilty as charged. Guilty. Look, I sold my business. when an offer came in to buy it in Hong Kong, I remember I called some of the shareholders and I said, well, what do you think, Chris? And I said, look, there was a time where I knew where every fuse was and what it controlled. And I got to the point where restaurants were being built when I was on vacation. I was coming back and saying, move that light up. I want this a little darker here. I want this a little brighter here. And the reality was I was losing my edge. I was starting to trade the pleasures of life against my business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it meant I was going to be less and less competitive. The guy who opens next door, owner operator, is going to beat me. Now with 37 restaurants, I had buying power. I had other things that could support.
And the owner, just to be clear, the owner operator is going to beat you because he's in there living, breathing, knows where every fuse is, and can optimize.
And optimize the customer satisfaction if they're on the floor and they're in it. So I was becoming less competitive. My competitive strength, however, was my buying potential. Landlords willing to give me lower rents because of my girth, the size of the company, stability. They knew they were going to get paid. We couldn't really afford to bankrupt a restaurant and walk away from it, even though we did. For the first 15 restaurants, we had separate little limited liability companies. There was firewalls in between all of them that I could jettison something that was on fire if I had to. But at a certain size, you can't do that anymore because your reputation is worth more than that, the economic loss. Business sold, public company took me out. And, you know, that whole private equity concept, sometimes I wonder if they paid me too much. I'll never admit that, but I think maybe they did. But on the same token, because they were trading at a much higher multiple, they made money too. And then, yeah, of course, then the boat trip came. I dove from total driving a company into, I built my own boat. I built a building. It was a 104-foot aluminum sailboat. That was a 3-year project, building the building and hiring 100 guys. And I became a shipyard. I built my own shipyard, which they said it couldn't be done. We did it. And we launched that and sailed around the world, 42 countries. You're sailing around the world. I had crew on board. We had a teacher on board for our children, teaching our children in Mandarin.
I'm sorry, I said son before, but you have children. I've only met your son before canon, right?
That's right. Yeah, I have a daughter also.
What's your daughter's name? Give her a shout out. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Kiana. So we have Kiana and Kiana.
Kiana, I apologize. I look forward to meeting you.
She didn't come to Bruce's Swamp. That's the problem.
Yes, exactly. She's smart. She's smarter than the boys.
She says she wants to come. So they left full-time employment and basically had a full-time job building a boat. And then sailing around the world is a full-time job. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of logistics, a lot of planning, things to worry about. Of course, coupled with a lot of leisure. That became an all-consuming passion. Came through the Panama Canal. The idea was we were heading back to Asia. We needed to get into the Pacific. Back to the house we'd already built in Thailand on the golf course, and a kid's school was going to be nearby. And I came in and looked at Panama City, and I was like, wow, I did not know. And all your viewers should do this. Google a picture of the Panama skyline.
Oh, it's insane.
Most people think it's 3 to 4 story buildings and, you know, some paved roads. It's a city of 2 million people with a skyline that rivals Miami. And when I saw that, I was quite in shock. We had dinner with an old childhood friend of my wife from grade school in Hong Kong that they hadn't seen each other in 30 years. And that night at dinner, I asked her what the best private schools was and the best shopping mall. And we got back to our boat. My wife was like, what are you asking her about schools? And I said, I'm thinking we should stay here for 2 years. That didn't go down very well. That required going to sleep, and I revisited it with her in the morning.
Wait, help me with your wife's name.
Vicky.
Okay, and where's Vicky from originally?
Vicky's Indian, but 3rd generation, born in Hong Kong.
Okay, got it.
So my kids are born in Hong Kong, and you know the kids grew up with speaking Cantonese with her. She speaks Punjabi and English, and then we put them into Mandarin mainstream. So by the time we got to Panama, the kids were fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English, and reading and writing traditional Chinese. I looked at Panama City. I was like, if they spent 2 years here and became fluent in Spanish, I can't get my kids to make their bed, but I can get them to learn Spanish through osmosis by forcing them to live in a country.
Oh my God. Then they can communicate with 75 or 80% of the world.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's the logic of staying. And it took a little bit of, it took a couple chats with the missus, but we all agreed finally it was the best thing to do. And that's why we stayed here. 6 months into Panama, the truth is I hated Panama. I hated the country. I hated everything about it. And 6 months later, I was having my morning shave, and I looked in the mirror and I asked myself, you hate Panama City? You hate Panama, or you hate the man in the mirror? Very deep moment. It was the man in the mirror. I realized at that point that my frustration with Panama was not Panama, it was me. I was bored. The boat was on the Atlantic side. I would see the boat once a week. I was living in a rented home, basically with limited friends, waiting for my kids to come home from school. So I went into the old city. I realized we might need to stay 2 more years, ultimately 3, to get the Spanish perfect. And I went into the old town looking for a little shop house, a little building, something. It was going to be a hobby job. 2 years, I'll restore a little building, and I'll either sell it or rent it, and we get back on boat and we leave. Well, I bought a city block, and everything changed.
Wow. And then, okay, so from renovating a small store or to buying a city block, at what point did you say, oh, I've done 38 or 37 restaurants in Hong Kong, but you know what? I want to do a hotel here.
Yeah, I know. I understand. I understand the question. Look, I had a real estate agent, and property was becoming very hot. The old city of Panama was a derelict city coming back. It was a ghetto. It was being restored. UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site. And then you look at old San Juan and old Cartagena in Colombia, and you realize where the potential lied. But the potential here was much greater. We had a city of 2 million people lying behind it in the Panama Canal. So people with, we have the most dynamic economy in Central America, the safest place. Many attributes that made me really think this is a good place to invest the money. I was outbid on 3 different sites. And my agent one day showed me a city block, and he said, look, he slid it across the table and goes, this isn't official yet, but it looks like this is going to come onto the market. And I turned the papers over and I said to him, what are you doing? I want a quarter building, 150 square meters per floor, 2 floors. That's the target. And you're showing me a city block. And he was like, I'm sorry. I just thought maybe. And he showed me a few other things. But at the end of the day, he gave me all the papers, which I then took home. And in my abject boredom, waiting for my kids to come home from school, I would look at them and mull over them. And I looked at the city block. And then the calculator came out, and a piece of paper came out, and a computer and a calculator. And I started to develop how big is this and what could it be? And I came up with a hotel. And then I researched more about the building. This building, or 2/3 of it, was a convent from 1688.
Wow.
Now, all we started with were exterior walls, floors that collapsed, trees growing out of the walls. But I fell in love. I basically fell in love with an idea of restoring a convent.
Did you fall in love or become completely obsessed? Because I'm sensing there's like
Obsession.
an obsession thing. And maybe it's hard to draw a line between those two, but it's like your uncompromising inner visionary was awakened.
Yeah. And I remember asking for my wife for permission because this meant a complete change of the game. We're not going back to Thailand. We're staying here.
And the house is built. It's done in Thailand, waiting for you.
It's on a golf course sitting there waiting for us. So a complete change. And my wife said to me, she goes, okay, first I got to ask you a question. Have we spent all the money? Is it all gone from the sale of the other business? Is this why you need to go back to work? And I said, no, it's fine. And she said, well, okay. If you do this, you're going to deploy our capital into it. I said, that's correct. And she goes, what if it fails? What about the rest of our life then? I said, well, then I've messed up our retirement. And she said to me, so my decision here is we live comfortably ever after if you do not go back to work. you go back to work, we change all our plans for the future, and if you fail, you're going to ruin our retirement. And I said, yep, that's about the size of this. And she said, why? Why? Tell me why.
So Vicky is a really good scenario planner.
Yeah, well, I think when it affects her whole life, everything's going upside down. And I went for a little walk and I came back and I said to her, I said, why do some men climb Mount Everest or some people climb Mount Everest? There's no money up there. I said, this is a once in 50 lifetime opportunity. If this was a Holiday Inn Express, and nothing against Holiday Inn Express or any limited service hotel, I wouldn't have done it. But to restore a convent of 1688, I could go buy an old manor house in Scotland where a sheep walks past once a week. But to be able to buy a city block from 1688 with that sort of pedigree in an up-and-coming city, that's once in 50 lifetimes that something like that happens. And she gave me the green light. And well, that's that. Then the disease set in and the rot and the passion. And it was an 8-year project to from that point to opening. 8 years of your life. That's a long time.
What was your original schedule?
I think I probably thought I could get it done in about 4.
Mm-hmm.
It took a couple of years to get approvals. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, grade 1. This is it took about 2.5 years to get the approval. Nobody wanted to invest. When I say invest, bankers, some bankers in Panama, when I said the word hotel, they heard a 4-letter word. They laughed at me. There was a total oversupply of hotels, and everybody I spoke to, when I said I'm going to open a hotel, they were like, what? Are you insane? The hotel business is terrible. And I said, well, not only am I insane, I said, I'm arrogant and belligerent too. I'm going to build the best historic landmark hotel in Central America. I'm going to change the tourism of this country. Big statement, right?
Yeah.
I have thoughts on that. Sometimes when everybody tells me not to do anything and they think you're insane. Well, Albert Einstein once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. And that's what the hotel business of Panama is. Modern buildings, developers build them, bring in brands to operate or manage or franchise them. And they're not selling an experience, they're selling a room. And that scares the hell out of me. That's a mug's game. That the price is driven by the internet, not by the experience, by the customer. The more that it opens, the less control I have. I don't like that at all. But I sat in a dark room and I said to myself, if I listen to what everybody said or saying, I'm not really making a decision, am I? I'm doing what I've been told to do. But how can those people tell me what to do if they can't see what I see? It's wrong. I'm opening a hotel? Yes. And my hotel, let's say, cost $150 more than a 5-star hotel. You pay a premium. I'm not $450 or what. I'm $150 more than you have to spend to get your clean, safe bed that you need to suffice your requirement to sleep. So you can spend that money, have no memory, and never recall anything about Panama. Or you spend $150 premium and you have a memory for life. I believe that people are willing to do that. And I can say now that I'm right.
Yeah, well, that's also the draw to the independent hotel, right? And these independent hospitality experiences. It's not about the room. The room has to be good. It's not about the public spaces. It's not about the neighborhood individually. It's all those things tied together. And I think ultimately, in many of the most successful independent hotels, there's that passion and vision or uncompromising vision of the owner operator. And you're in there doing that. And now you're on to number 2. So one of the things I was struck by is you built this one. It took 8 years. It was the ultimate passion thrown into it. It's a successful hotel. Now you're on to number 2. And now you have this vision of potentially doing 3, but walk us through the 1, the 2, the 3, and what that means. And Yeah, I'd love to just share that. Like, what is your end game vision for this, or visions?
Okay, well, I'm going to take you back in the story, back to where everybody said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I sat in a dark room thinking about it. My conclusion was very simple. I believe people will pay a premium for an experience. So my job is to create the experience. If I deliver the experience and I create the food and beverage concepts and the service standard and then complete the mission, it should work. So I'm going to go contrarian and I'm going to go against everybody else's recommendation, because what they've actually recommended to me, they said, don't do it. The reality is they gave me a crystal ball to see the future. And what do I mean by that? We all want to buy stocks low and sell high, and nobody gets to do it, or not many get to do it. And the reason we can't do that is we don't know supply and demand. That dictates pricing. Well, in this case, I know half the equation. I know the bottoms. The banks won't lend. Developers won't build new hotels. We've bottomed. We've oversupplied the market we grew. Panama market grew by 110% in 2 years. The number of beds. No city could absorb that. So we bottomed. So I know I'm entering at the bottom of the market, but I'm entering with a unique product. So if I can survive now, down the road, I have a very clean runway in front of me that no new hotels will be built until the complete industry stabilizes. And the banks are going to want to see 2 years of that before they lend. And then we got a 3-year build time. I have an 8, 9, 10-year runway in front of me. So that's one thing. That was part of the reason of doing it. And I'm still answering your question. Sorry, it's a bit long-winded.
No, I love it. Keep going.
But I sat in my dark room and said, okay, I'm going for it. But I had this lingering doubt, the what if they're right doubt. If I build what I said I was going to build and deliver the quality that I intended to do, and it didn't work, that would mean I'm in a glass box and a glass ceiling was put on top. And quite frankly, it was put on top by Panama, not bringing enough people in willing to pay that premium. The problem with that is we're now the water's filling into the room, and it's going to be the worst of any business, because I'm going to die, and I'm going to die slowly. I'm going to bankrupt slowly. You don't have the money and the income to support your product. You have to cut costs. You can't sleep at night. You make yourself sick, and you die slowly. The worst of all businesses. I would much rather take a bullet and get, through the pain. I didn't like that concept. So I thought to myself, what do you do if that happens? What is that's the defensive. But what's the contrarian do? We're in an evolutionary world. We have to think about revolutionary businesses. You're exposed, if you're an evolutionary business, you're exposed to danger from a revolutionary business. So what's the contrarian view? What's the offensive defensive? And I'm like, if Panama's not bringing enough people in, I need to change the country. I need to crack the glass so the air can slip in. And my contrarian view was, I'll build 2 more hotels, 2 more smaller ones with their own runways. I'll create a circuit in Panama. The circuit could be hosted, the trifecta, perfecta, I call it, could be hosted anywhere else. It could be in Costa Rica. It could be in Honduras. It could be anywhere. But if I started here, if La Compania, Hotel La Compania in Casco Viejo does not make it or is struggling, I'm going to throw more money at it, bring more investors, and I'm going to create my own country. So that was the idea. Fast forward, we hit COVID. In COVID, we're 90%, 80% built. What does the world look like post-COVID? There was an idea that changed it to apartments. I overruled my shareholders. They wanted a vote. I said, I own the majority. I said, there's no vote. We're doing it. We're going. And they're like, cut the budget of the hotel. I said, I'm not cutting the budget either. We're going for it. We got to go for gold. And we did it. And post-COVID, little hotels started opening up around Panama. Little 6 rooms, 8-room boutique hotels that are $500 to $3,000 a night. And I see green shoots all through the country in that luxury adventure travel market. And those people they're looking for a new drug. They're looking for new places. but they want their 500 threads count sheet at the end of the adventure of getting there. So I'm seeing the green shoots. I opened La Compania. We were profitable from our first full month.
Wow.
There's no reason for Chris to build more hotels. A year later, a couple too many glasses of red wine. I took over a 12,000 square foot mansion in the old city. I made a art gallery, a restaurant. This is called Villana, a jazz club and speakeasy. So now in the hotel, I have 5 restaurants and 2 bars, and a block away, I have a 12,000 square foot mansion from 1924 with another restaurant and 2 more bars.
And are you operating those restaurants as well?
I operate everything. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info.
And, there's scale. You run, sometimes I believe 5 restaurants is easier to operate than 1 because I can afford stronger people to distribute their costs. The new hotel where I'm sitting today, I bought it to flip it. That's the truth. This was supposed to be a hotel flip. I renovate the place in 9 months. I run it for a year. I get the profit up. I sell it at a higher multiple. And I finally learned the difference between earning money and making it. This was a hotel flip. That was the excuse to my wife and my opportunity. I get to throw a bit of fairy dust because, quite frankly, my wife says I'm better at making babies than taking care of them.
Yeah, okay.
In a project sense. My addiction is to creating new things. And this would allow me to create and allow me to make money. That's the best of both worlds, as far as Chris Lenz is concerned. And, by the time I was signing the deed to buy it, I thought back to that idea with the trifecta, perfecta. I thought, wait a minute. What I'm doing with the second hotel, this is the first international hotel in the interior of Panama. This is the first hotel.
Wow.
It's a big statement, right? Very big statement. There is a Marriott property, but that property is part of a major housing development, golf course, real estate development. It's not a standalone hotel, live and die by the hotel per se. So I argue that this is the first hotel in the country, we're only 70 rooms, but it's a Hyatt Unbound. So this is the first international hotel.
And then just to be clear, Panama City Compania is Hyatt Unbound as well.
That's correct.
Okay, I want to get into that in a little while, but keep going with you.
There is no comp set. There's nothing that I could look at and say, this should work. I could in other countries in Latam, but not here. The only thing I could look at as a comp set was the hotel I was buying. Very odd. So a bit of a risk.
It makes flipping harder too.
Absolutely. Unless I can break the paradigm.
Yeah, and show cash flow, and then
Exactly.
Then you can...
Obviously, I thought I could do that. I wouldn't have signed a check. But upon signing the check, it's like, wait a minute. If I do one more, I'm 2/3 of the way to the trifecta perfecta. If I do one more, I can change the paradigm. And my wife is like, why? And I said, well, this is once in 100 lifetime opportunity. And it's not necessarily driven by economics, although there is an economics beside argument. And let me explain both. If I do the third hotel, it will be the only 3 hotels linked with its own private air service, with its own private runways in all of Latam. This has never been done. First mover advantage, you get an old city experience, you get a mountain experience, and you get a beach experience. And I take you room to room within 40 minutes. I believe the traveler loves to travel, but we hate getting there. The airports. If I can cut all that out and make it, the pilot will say, I'm ready when you are. That type of travel. This is jet set stuff for not jet set money. I think that I could change the future of Panama's tourism forever. Only one person gets to make that claim, and now it's my ego talking, yes. But it's also relevant that I'm aware I have an opportunity to make a significant difference that most of us will never see in our lifetimes. So having that opportunity and believing I have the capability is hard to resist. You know, I'm addicted to it.
Well, I think you said a minute ago, you're building your own country, right? The trifecta perfecta.
Yeah, it could change the whole thing. And of course, then you get into, we created something completely unique that major luxury tour operators, major luxury investors, ultra high net worth individuals would want to buy. This is a very marketable commodity. It becomes a significant exit strategy. People can copy me. Sure, of course you can copy me. But I have 2 hotels finished and I'm planning the 3rd. You need to build the 3 first.
Yeah.
I got 8-year mover advantage.
But I also, and that's that original runway you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
For anyone to catch up. So the other thing I think that's really interesting is that you have that owner operator passion that you're putting into all these 3. So you can, again, continue to be that uncompromising visionary and focus on the experience, right? So that's where this whole conversation kind of made a right turn, was just on that independent idea and experience, that whole cohesive thing. And I love the idea of having air service between them all. And you mentioned Marriott, because Marriott is somewhere up in the interior of the country as well, in a bigger housing development. But you chose Hyatt to manage all 3 of these, or 2 of the properties.
They do not manage. No, these are
operate.
No, they do not operate. It's a franchise contract only. I operate.
Oh.
I operate the hotels independently. So quite often you'll have a hotel owner will buy a franchise hotel and then hire a third-party independent manager that you've never heard of, company, to manage. In this case, that I'm owner operator was very unusual for Hyatt, and they actually had to come down here and interview me, and obviously I passed. So we're owner operator, and Hyatt as a soft brand, really what we get out of this, we have access to the reservation network. We have access to loyalty members. Those people have access to us. There's some sort of stamp of approval on our product. But I have my almost total independence to do what I want. They're very unforgiving on life and safety. That has to be to American norm standard. They no compromise there. But they cannot commoditize unique and boutique hotels. It can't be done. In fact, you don't want to do that. You don't want to commoditize a unique hotel because you would take its uniqueness away. So ultimately, the big brands of the world, when the internet came, if I had come with, my 2 hotels are totally unique and they're totally different from each other. I can explain that in a minute. But if I had come with a restored, I call our city hotel a living museum. It didn't fit a Hyatt. It wouldn't fit a Holiday Inn. And pre-internet, no brand would have entertained branding that. But then the internet came and the world changed, and suddenly you could find a hotel in Tokyo with 14 rooms that was unique and boutique, and you'd book direct through booking.com. The big brands started losing market share to the independents. And in order to sort of claim that back, the market share they were losing, we saw things like Unbound Collection start, Autograph Collection, Luxury Collection, all of these soft brands, which is a way that I can interact with a big brand without losing my identity. So I get the benefit of buying power of a big brand, negotiations with online travel agents. I get standards to a certain degree. But we can both live in opposite hemispheres, but our water goes down the same drain. It just goes down in different directions, but we can do it peacefully and together.
So I assume Hyatt wasn't the only brand that you were speaking with. What was it that drew you to Hyatt specifically?
First of all, the Unbound Collection. I think some of the other brands just want to sign hotel deals. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pick on any brand here, but when a hotel doesn't fit into a standard box, we can throw it into the unique and boutique collection box. I don't want to be in a box with a bunch of other hotels that have varying standards from a 2-star to a 5-star hotels. What I like about the Hyatt Unbound collection, if you study their hotels, they're all unique and boutique. They all tell a story. They're all special. And I'm proud to be linked with them. You know, when they renovate the Scotland Yard in London, I like being associated with that. I like being associated with the quality of those hotels where some of the other soft brands are not maintaining their integrity. Thereby, that would be damaging mine.
And was it anything in particular about the person that you were negotiating with at Hyatt that was able to tell that story to you? Or had you done a lot of research and you're like, oh, you know what, Hyatt, I think Hyatt's the one? Or were you surprised along the process of interviewing all the soft brands?
I interviewed them all, and I did my comparative chart. I did all of that. A lot of them were like young 32-year-olds. Come on, we got you. We got your back, sign here. Hyatt, when I started talking business after coffee, and they said, Cook, let's not talk about business yet. Let's go for lunch and have a bottle of wine and get to know each other. I want to hear about what you want to do. It was more curated and smaller. Hyatt has grown dramatically in the last 5 years, 6 years.
I also get the feeling, not knowing much about it, but they've grown tremendously, but they also have a small feel to them, right? And it's like there's a certain element of caring and individuality that you experience through even like a big Hyatt Regency. There's just, I don't know, I feel like you can pick up the phone and talk to someone.
Yeah, I think so. I think they feel part of their DNA versus other brands is they care a lot more about food and beverage. And I believe that food and beverage, a lot of brands will actually, a lot of owners, in fact, will lease out the restaurant of the hotel and somebody else operates it because it's less profitable, it's more headache. I understand that. That's when a hotel becomes dollars per square foot. My definition of hospitality is very different. I'm old school, and it's all about the customer. It's all about our presence, our F&B in the hotel. That's our calling card.
Oh my God, I just realized something totally crazy. This might be the first interview I've done in forever where I forgot to ask how you define hospitality at the beginning. I was so transfixed in the story and journey and everything that normally I ask that at the beginning. Wow. Okay. So thank you for doing my job for me.
Look, I'm an old world hotelier. In fact, I left the hotel business because I was made the corporate director of Omni Hotels at the age of 30. I was in charge of Asia. And when I got to the corporate office, I saw a lot of people more interested in protecting their jobs than forwarding what we were doing in a development experimental range. And I felt that my freedom of creativity was going to be squashed. And I did that job for 1 year, 365 days to the day. And then I opened a horror-themed dinner theater, which was completely in the opposite direction of the corporate world. And I wore makeup every evening. I believe very firmly in hospitality. I remember I had to present. My last presentation I made to Omni was for a hotel in Jakarta. It had 5 restaurants in it. And I asked my boss not to tell the president what I was doing. So the first time the president saw it, we were all in a room with the Indonesian owner. And I started my presentation saying to the owner, we're going to build 5 restaurants. 2, we're going to go bankrupt in the first year. We'll have to change them. There was jaw drops around the table. That is not what you tell an owner. But I said to him, but the other 3 are going to make so much money that you'll be happy to renovate the other 2. And those restaurants are going to create the DNA and create the reputation of the hotel because that's where locals go. And then they've never seen a hotel room, but when you call and say, I'm coming to Panama, where should I stay? Stay at this hotel because I have a link to it. I know it. I know its restaurant. I know its soul. I felt its pulse. I've never seen a room, but I'll recommend you that hotel. And I think a lot of hoteliers have forgotten about this because they've gotten into the commoditized room selling business. That's not me. I sell an experience. And my local market, 65% of my hotel in the city's income is from food and beverage. That's unheard of in a hotel. Absolutely unheard of.
Well, I think you said it earlier. It's not necessarily, I think historically it's unheard of. I think if you talk to any general manager, if it, like, hey, GM, what's the fastest way to get your hotel to be profitable? They say, get rid of F&B, right? That's the best. But in the independent space, I find that they're leading with the F and the B, and sometimes they lead with the B.
Absolutely.
But it's very rare. But I think it only really has started happening more frequently in the independent space. And then going back to the original question of Hyatt, so in what other than like having the glass of wine to get to know you better, and really kind of so that they could put the finger on your pulse, right? How did you know that they would give such a level of importance to F&B, or did they lead with that, or did you have to ask questions to get there? Like,
No. In fact, a normal soft branding deal is a percentage of room revenue as a royalty to the brand and a percentage of F&B royalty to the brand. I said, and to me, I said to Hyatt, what are you going to do with my F&B? You got nothing to do with it. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to pay you. And that was a sort of a juxtaposition. And we had arguments about that, or debates, discussions. But they're not running my hotel. This is the critical issue. And one of the big points about Hyatt is their percentage of royalty is higher than all of the other brands, but they charge it on what they deliver.
so how do you define on what they deliver? Is that what's coming through their own booking engine?
Exactly. So if they were to drive 100% of my business through their booking through Hyatt.com, it would actually be one of my cheapest sources of bookings. So I would gladly have them put 100% of my business through. The only way I can have it cheaper is somebody books directly with me. But that's not really how the world works. It does for corporate events and group bookings, et cetera, et cetera. But that was a big driver for me for Hyatt, coupled with they were conscious and clear that not every hotel that wants to is going to become an Unbound collection. At that point, I think there was 32 hotels in the collection. I think we're at 51 now. That's slow growth. It's meaning they're being picky. And that brand was a lifestyle brand originally, and they've just elevated it to a luxury brand. It's also very important. So they raised it to their level of, let's say, a Park Hyatt. So they've recognized the group of hotels they put together is more than just lifestyle. It's luxury. And they've moved their own brand up in their own eyes. So it means they're curating correctly. They're being picky.
That's interesting, because that's super interesting, because if you think about if they had 31 or whatever hotels when they were talking to you, you had one, but now you have two. At some point in there, you were probably 5 to 10%. No, probably 5 to 8% of their portfolio at that point. And I'm sure other conversations and in their curation with other people like you in other countries, I bet that you were part of them helping elevate the Unbound brand to more of a luxury offering.
Absolutely. We have for 3 years been by Hyatt has their own guest satisfaction survey that they administer, not us. In the Unbound collection, since day one, we were the number 2 hotel in the world. In the Unbound collection, there's one hotel that keeps beating me in China. The hotels, what I like to say is we've had for 3 years running, had the number 1 Hyatt Unbound collection hotel in the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, so now I have a question on the number 1, because it's guest survey, correct?
Yes.
So in the comments that are coming back, what are the top 3 things that the customers love about the experience at La Compania?
uniqueness of the hotel. So we have 88 rooms. We have 3 different wings. We have an American colonial wing, we have a French colonial wing, and a Spanish colonial wing inside a convent from 1688. Our American wing, those buildings are younger. Our French wing was actually is inside of what was a Jesuit university, the 7th oldest university in North and South America. That after the exile of the Jesuits in 1767 had a fire and burnt down, only left some remedial structure. The French rebuilt it when they came to Panama to build the Panama Canal. So when we inherited that building, it had a French feel to it. So we decided to roll with the French. Panama has sort of been colonialized by the Spanish, then the French, and then the Americans. So our hotels, when we say living museum, we have over 3,000 framed images on our wall. I started with a library of 8,000 historical images. It took me 5 years to put that together. You imagine printing 3,000 images and framing them, and where do they go? Just that, the logistics behind that. The 5 restaurants, the standard of service we bear, and the authenticity. It's a unique hotel. And this is, I call it the curse of La Compania Hotels and Resorts, because I cannot build anything normal anymore.
Yeah. So when you found the flipper up in the mountains, it couldn't have been as unique as what you found in the old UNESCO World Heritage Site. So how do you take that uniqueness and apply it to what you've done up in the mountains?
Yeah, this is this is what I call the curse of La Compania. If I had a decent, let's say 4-star hotel branded in the city, and I opened the same 4 or 5-star, but a decent branded hotel, and I opened a mountain branded hotel, and you came to the first hotel, and then we're going to go see the sister property, most guests would be happy. If you come to La Compania in Casco, and you spend days in one of the most unique hotels you've ever seen, and then you go to our sister property in the mountain and find a regular 5-star hotel, you're not going to be happy. It cannot be called La Compania. But yet, that's the curse. We cannot build normal. But on the same token, I don't have another convent from 1688. So I have to reach very deep into my bag of tricks to pull out something new. And I tell people, when we opened La Compania in the city, we pulled a rabbit out of a hat. When we opened Villa Ana a block away, we pulled a small hat out of a rabbit. This time, I'm pulling a big hat out of a rabbit.
Wow.
And the DNA of this hotel is found at, we call it La Compania del Valle, its location, an art and wellness house. So this time, we have about 160 sculptures throughout the hotel, all in the public areas inside. The hotel's shape of a U with swimming pools inside. The building that we took over had a Tuscan feel to it. We've expanded that feel. We bought the property next door. We opened it all up. We have about 50 outdoor sculptures. So we have a sculpture park. We have an art and wellness house. And we're currently, when I say soft open, we have 60 rooms available and 3 restaurants open. But we're in about July, we're going to open a 22,000 square foot spa. It started as 18. We just expanded it.
That's huge. How many service, what do they even call those little beds? How many beds are in there as far as like massage tables and treatment rooms? There we go.
Indoor, 4 treatment rooms plus a VIP room for 2. So 2 doubles, 3 singles, and then we're making quite a large area outdoor. This area of nature, we have a very temperate climate. And the part of the property we're building in, I'm actually making a human's bird's nest park behind the spa. These are bird's nests physically big enough for humans to get into. 2 people can go inside. This is your meditating, yoga, Zen area of the property. This is where all the birds are. The birds, wildlife here is incredible.
And it's temperate because you're at altitude.
Yeah, you're at 700 meters. We average 26 degrees Celsius year round here. So we're making about another 6 beds outdoor so you can hear the sounds of nature and be with nature rather than an air-conditioned cubicle. But the spa indoor It's going to be about 18,000 square feet indoor, where you go through, you'll leave a change room, go down a long tunnel, a brick tunnel, to get to a round room with no windows. And you'll look down into the ground. You'll go down into the ground in a spiral staircase. And you're around the periphery of the spiral staircase, you're going to see water glowing. You go down the staircase, the last 5 stairs are into water. Then you're about a meter deep of water, so a little over 3 feet. And you have a 47-foot tunnel in front of you built at 90 degrees that you have to go through, and you arrive in underground Roman baths. There's an underground Roman baths. There's a 2nd story underground with a salt pool where you float in it. There's a whole sound bathrooms, salt vapor rooms, cold water plunge, jacuzzi, steam rooms. This is mega. And I'm not playing games. My intention is to build the best spa in Central America, period. That's the goal. I won't accept anything less. And again, the truth is God did 50% of the work up here. The old owners of the restaurant next door that I bought and the hotel did 25% of the work. I'm doing the final 25% of the work, but I want 100% of the credit. But I'm going to hammer home a uniqueness that is completely different than the city, but yet the objective is to be just as inspiring and unique. And this is my problem and the curse, which I've now renamed the curse because it sounds negative, into the guiding light for the 3rd hotel, that we don't do normal. We don't. But if I can deliver 3 experiences completely and utterly unique, but at the highest level, where else has that been done? You can see that in a week.
I don't know, because the closest that comes to mind, and for my honeymoon, we almost did this, but there was a bombing in Bali, so we couldn't go in 2002, I believe. But it was like Ubud, the 4 Seasons Ubud, and then Jimbaran Bay, where you could go stay at one up in the mountains, and then they would when it was time to go down to the beach, they would pack your bags for you, put you in like one of those old VW cool Indonesian bugs, colorful things, drive you down, and then they unpack for you. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But we wound up not going. But I've not heard of 3, maybe like those, I think they were luxury collection haciendas around Merida, maybe. But like those are all kind of in the same topography.
Yeah, and the objective I have is much stronger. That you call to make a booking, and you're interested in 3 hotels. You get a private concierge assigned to you. A Zoom call takes place with you and your missus or your spouse, partner. We explain the 3 hotels, what we have to offer. And then we ask you, what do you like? Are you a beach person? Are you a mountain person? Are you a hiker? Are you horseback riding? What do you like? And then and how long do you want to come for? And we'll make a recommended package for you. We'll organize your tee-offs. We'll organize everything that you need. And your private concierge will meet you at the airport airside when you arrive, take you through VIP security clearance, and we take care of everything after that.
It's almost got like a safari feel. It's
Safaris are the closest ones where a large operator will have 2 lodges because of different game. Now fly you from one lodge to the other because here they have elephants and there they have lions. But I want to show the beauty this country has, and quickly, logistically quickly. If we're flying over the ocean and we see a whale, which there's many, we have 2 whale seasons here, the pilot's going to circle around to make sure everybody gets a picture. But this sort of experience would be viewed as a $2,000 a day experience. I believe I can do it a lot more cost efficient than that. I've chosen the hotels that it's literally a 20-minute flight, 20-minute flight, 20-minute flight. It's 40-minute hotel to hotel, but I changed your world in 40 minutes. And that's the exciting part. And look, there's a business side behind it too, that if I can create this and nobody else has this, somebody else might want it.
Well, someone else might want it and pay a really healthy multiple. That may happen. But then I'm glad you brought up Mount Everest before. Like, Why do you climb it? Because it's there. This trifecta perfecta, let's say it's 5 years in the future. Let's say it's done. You're humming. Your intra-lodge airline is going. You're giving all these experiences. It's complete. What's the next summit for you, the uncompromising visionary? And then what's the difference between that and that 3-star Michelin? Is it because you're going to bed earlier?
No, look, I think the 3-star Michelin requires absolute commitment and personal attention. People want to see that chef. When we get a little bit bigger, I said earlier, sometimes 5 restaurants is easier to run than 1. As I get girth, I can hire better people to infuse my culture and push them to do it. I still like to be present. My favorite job till this day is waitering. Last night at 10:30, I was clearing plates in one of my restaurants. My staff look at me, they go, this is what you want, right? This is key to you. This is your culture. And yes, I'm old world. I love that. My favorite job in the world. It won't be 5 years if I do the 3rd hotel. It will be 3, or I will not do it. And I'm 59 years old now. Time is a trade. And you ask me what I want to do. I want to build another boat. I want to go to the Arctic and Antarctic. My wife's not too happy about that. And I have a few other chapters I want to write in my life that have nothing to do with this. And I'm aware that time is a factor.
And health.
And health. Yeah. I do not want to be building a 3rd hotel when I'm 65 that it won't economically change my life. I'm not interested. I tell people, if you think of, was it Burlington Railway in America or Amtrak? Amtrak. If a hotel chain is Amtrak Railroad or Burlington, I'm not interested to build that kind of railroad. But if you ask me if I want to finish with an Orient Express, the answer is yes. I see an opportunity to create something unique and boutique and special, something I can hang my hat on. Maybe it's something that's generational for my children to take over. I don't know. And I'm not smart enough as a businessman to have that all figured out. I've always said I keep doing what I'm good at, and the solutions will come.
And maybe in the 3 years or 2 or 3 years when the trifecta perfecta is done, you have this new boat, you're going to the Arctic and the Antarctic. That's your pause for what's next or not next. Who knows?
I don't know.
But Kiana and Cannon, are you going to freeze your ass off with your mom and dad is the real question.
They better have a job by then and be working there.
They'll be clearing tables
You got
at the
it.
trifecta perfecta.
They'll be doing something somewhere, but not with me. It's their time to work.
Awesome. Chris, this has just been a fantastic conversation and very inspiring. And now I feel like I need to get off my ass and do another business. So thank you for energizing me. I'm sure you've energized and impacted some listener. I've loved this conversation so much. It's so great to reconnect with you. And I want to give you a wholehearted thank you for sharing your story with all of our listeners.
My pleasure. Hope I didn't talk too much.
No, I loved it. And listeners, if you're like me and this sparked a fire under your ass, or someone that needs a little match lighting, please send this to them. This has been one of my favorite conversations from someone I met so long ago in a different life. So it's so good to reconnect and hear the story in more detail. But pass it along. Don't forget to like and subscribe it. And if you have any questions or comments, Chris can be reached at
best way, hlcpanama.com or through hyatt.com. Type in Panama, you're going to find two La Companias.
Perfect.
Ask for the Canadian guy.
Ask for the Canadian guy. Yeah, and we'll put all that in the show notes as well. So I just want to say thank you to our listeners, because without you, we wouldn't be having these amazing conversations and being impacted by people like Chris. So thank you, and we'll catch you.